Hey guys, Phil here from PRC Taping. Today we continue the how-to series with Columbia taping tools, and today we're going to be discussing all about angle heads. So the main difference between a flusher and an angle head is the flusher leaves a little bit more mud inside of your corner. It also doesn't leave as crisp of an edge as an angle head does, and you have to sand a little bit more. So flushers are great for renovations, doing all that kind of stuff, tying into old existing, but angle heads are very precision. You can adjust the mud flow on them and they leave a much more crisp corner, and again, straight from the factory, they leave the perfect amount of mud. So I'm going to get more into the adjustments of your side blades and the mud flow later on in this video. So I'm going to quickly go over what you would use certain angle head sizes for based on my personal preference and what I do on my job site. So when I'm taping, I will embed it with a roller after I've run my automatic taper, and then I will use a 2.5-inch angle head, and that angle head is worked in and it's set up the way I like it, the way I like to have my mud flow into the corners. Now, once you first get an angle head, they are going to be a little bit stiffer and you're going to need to run a few tapes. You're going to notice it may or may not rip a tape, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you fill the inside of this with mud before you start taping. Just to fill that angle head, start in the middle, work your way down, and go all the way up. And after a few angles, you will notice that the angle head will start running a little bit more freely once you do that. So like I said, I start with my 2.5-inch angle head and I work up. Some people work down, but I like to work up and go wider as I go. So I start with my 2.5 and I end with my throttle box on my 3.5. And that mud consistency you can see in some of the videos that we've posted in the past. You want it to be a yogurt type consistency when running through the throttle box, but because the throttle box has an assist with the springs, it's a little bit easier to run. So 3.5-inch angle head with the wheels on my throttle box for my skim coat. So there's not really a set rule on what you should use first or second. I tend to use the 2.5-inch first, end on the 3.5, but you could start higher and go lower. They even make a 2-inch angle head. You can go to a 3 after that. Again, you have 4 sizes to choose from. The best thing to do is to get them on your job site, try them out, and see what your preferred method is. So like I mentioned, the angle head is a very precision tool, and if your walls are not square, the angle head does not lie. So keep that in mind when you're running a corner and you maybe see an edge, you might think that your angle head is messed up, but it also could be the framing. So you want to keep that in mind. If you have a couple different angle heads, you can test out corners as you go, but now I'm going to get into the fun part, which is adjusting your angle heads. I'm not going to be adjusting angle heads in this video because you know what? I'm going to leave that to Aaron. He's the pro. I've adjusted my own angle heads for my personal preference, the way I like them. That doesn't mean that's going to work for you. So Aaron, up here in the link, or down here, wherever the link is going to be, is going to show you how to adjust the mud flow on your angle heads. It's very, very easy to do, but again, minor adjustments go a long way. So you want to make sure you watch that video closely and get personal preference on how you want your mud flow to be on your job sites. So the last thing I want to talk about is coating angles. Now there are really 3 different ways that you can coat angles with an angle head. The first method you don't see very often, but use a compound tube with an inside 90 applicator and you fill your corners and then you go right behind and you use an angle head. That's the first method. And the second method is putting your angle head right on the compound tube. So you're filling up the compound tube, you're putting this right on the tube itself, pushing the mud into the corner, and as you're doing that, you're doing it all in one motion. You're filling your corner right away with your angle head. So the third method is obviously the most common. You put your angle head right on the throttle box and you just start running your angles just like that. Very similar to the compound tube, but instead you're using your body to push with the throttle box rather than pushing the compound tube. So obviously my preferred method is running the throttle box, but I have used the compound tube multiple times in renovation situations or just smaller areas, smaller rooms, or up on scaffolds, stuff like that, where you just want more of that mud in the compound tube to run it. So that was a quick little how-to video on angle heads. I hope that helps, and I'll see you on the next one.